welcome to Amber Talks. Today I'm at Shadyside Park, which is this section of the park at Olmstead Linear Park. So this park was planned in the late 1800s and then finished in around 1905. It's a little bit loud here, as you can see. We're right along Ponce de Leon. But I'm going to move a little further into the park and try and talk to you guys there, and then I can do some voiceovers for some still photos so you can hear me even better. So I have to apologize, first of all, for how loud the traffic is in the live portions of this video, and then that this is going to be a longer video than most of my videos on my channel so far. But getting to the park, I've gone through this park several times, and the signage just gave me enough answers that I wanted to go research it further, and that again left me with questions like, why are there two names for this park? Who was Olmstead? And why is he so important that we are naming parks after him? Well, immediately upon looking him up, I find out that he is considered the father of American landscape architecture. And here's a portrait of him, and he is responsible for my and all of our American idea of what a park is, and the concept of a park, and the fact that we have parks in this country. Here's him as a younger man in the 1850s. He tried on a couple of different career paths before he got sucked into landscape architecture. He was on track to be going to Yale College, but got sumac poisoning, and it damaged his eyesight, so he decided to leave his studies and try out his hand at being an apprentice seaman. He sailed to China and got to see some of the high seas, got to see China. He tried his hand out as a merchant, and then finally he tried being a journalist, which he actually had some success in and was sent on research trips. Like he was sent to England in 1850, and he probably looked just about like this at that point, so that he could write articles about the pastoral landscape there, which actually helped get him work in the future. He had some connections and some experience with landscape, so this man, Calvert Vaux, invited him to help him out while he was participating in a competition to design a park in New York City. They came up with a design, and it actually won, and so what we now know of as Central Park was because they had won this competition. So Olmstead had this idea of not drawing attention to any one feature in a park and letting the natural features of a place sort of allow your unconscious to relax and give you a soothing effect. So this is why they had built those sort of subterranean pathways for cars and traffic to go underneath the park in Central Park. And here's a photo of the men who built those roadways. In the center, there's Calvert Vaux in the dark sort of suit, and then on the right hand side, that's Olmstead leaning on the railing. That picture is taken in 1862 in the middle of the Civil War, and at that time Olmstead was traveling around being not just a journalist but also a landscape architecturist, and then he left the Central Park to become an executive secretary of the Sanitary Commission. Now that's a group that became what we know today as the Red Cross. So in the middle of the Civil War, he was actually participating by supplying and tending to the medical needs of Union soldiers. He also was helping to recruit and outfit 3 regiments of African American men from New York City. So here's a picture of him as he would have been at that time, and here's a picture of the letter that he was writing to his wife about the Civil War as he traveled. And so getting back to some of his experience after the war, he continued doing landscape architecture, and he worked in parks, state parks. He worked on Niagara Falls, he worked on the Capitol building, he worked on the Vanderbilt estate in North Carolina. He also worked in Boston and Detroit and Chicago. He worked in Quebec and Ontario. He did work in Wisconsin and Maine and Delaware and Rhode Island and Maryland, and those all make sense because he is from the Northeast, but he also worked in West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and even in the South in Georgia and out west in California. So he really got spread around, and many of what we know of parks today are designed by him, and the idea of a park in general is what we have is thanks to his influence on our culture. All right, so getting back to Shadyside Park. It was 1890, and Joel Hurt was designing a neighborhood to be called Druid Hills, and he wanted to design the ideal suburb. So he invited Olmstead to help him with the design, and in 1890 to 1902, they designed it and began clearing land for the park. Here's a picture of what the park looked like in 1902 as they were, it was a work in progress, and they were working on building the park as we know it today in the middle of the Druid Hills neighborhood.
So in the 1930s, these works were added to the park as part of the Works Progress Administration under the New Deal by FDR. So they added a little bridge, a little well, and a small pond to go along with the park, which was not in the original plans for the park, but they're still here today. So a majority of the park has been restored, with the addition of keeping these works that were placed here in the 1930s. The stone well and the bridge I showed you are some of the only pieces that were not part of Olmsted's original design.
So now I just wanted to show you a couple more pictures of the 1930s additions to the park, the well, and the bridge, to go along with these photos I found from Library of Congress that are from 1933. And then I wanted to draw your attention to this tree in this last photo, as that's obviously the same tree. If you go there, it still has the same outline today. And so I took pictures and video near the tree. And I should also point out at this point that up until the 1940s, there was the rail track through here, as the Druid Hills was designed as one of the original streetcar suburbs. After the 40s and 50s, though, the park sort of fell into disuse, and in the 50s and 60s, people littered there and parked their cars there, and who knows what. So in the 70s, the city wanted to put a highway through, like I had mentioned in my other park videos, but at this point, it would have destroyed this specific piece of the Olmstead Park, and protesters in the 80s set up what is on the sign that you'll see if you go there, Tent City. And so Tent City was them camping out, putting tents up, and they actually sat in trees that were being bulldozed, and there was over 60 arrests of these protesters. They did actually win, and they fought off the city, in multiple different parks are still formed from that. But this specific park was sort of at the height of it and very much the heat of the moment while that protest was going on. But I'm glad that they won. It's really nice that we have this little slice of history preserved in these parks.
Thank you for joining me on this historical tour through the park today. Please like and share this video, and please subscribe to the channel if you like it and you want to see more videos like this.